Hi, my name is Amanda Gustin, and I'm the Public Program Manager at the Vermont Historical Society. Today I'm going to talk about a few items from our collection. So the two items I'm going to share with you today are two campaign buttons related to Governor Madeleine Kunin. Kunin was first elected in 1972 as a state representative from a brand new district in Burlington. That was the first time she had held political office, and she served a few terms as legislator and then ran for lieutenant governor in 1978. She served 2 terms as lieutenant governor, ran for governor in 1982 unsuccessfully, and then ran again in 1984 and was elected. The first time in Vermont's history a woman was elected governor of the state. Now, she served for 3 terms from 1985 to 1991, and in fact was the first woman in the United States to win a 3rd term as governor. So the objects I'm going to share to you today are 2 campaign buttons for sort of 2 different moments in her political career. The first one is from one of her campaigns as lieutenant governor. And it says Kunin in large block letters, and then an exclamation point, and then it's got the year 80 below that. Now in 1980, Madeleine Kunin was running for her 2nd term as lieutenant governor, and she was actually running against another woman. On the Republican ticket was Peg Garland, Margaret Garland, and Peg Garland, we have in our collection some campaign buttons of hers as well, and she also used just block last name. So if you didn't know the backstory behind this election and behind these buttons, you wouldn't know that it was in fact 2 women running against each other to become lieutenant governor of the state of Vermont. Kunin was only the 2nd woman to be elected lieutenant governor of the state of Vermont, so this is still somewhat unusual to have 2 women running for high elected office in Vermont. So the second button I'm going to talk about is from one of Madeleine Kunin's gubernatorial campaigns. So we have a lot of political campaign buttons in the collections of the Vermont Historical Society. They're an easy thing to collect. They signify a particular moment in history. They change. Generally, they change constantly. Every couple of years, you get a fresh crop of them. And people who lived during the moment of a particular election often have strong emotional ties, one way or the other, to a candidate or a campaign. So they're very evocative objects. When you look at them, you're sort of transported back to that historic moment. And as I said, we have a lot of them. But this particular button, which is from one of Madeleine Kunin's gubernatorial campaigns, is unusual in a couple of different ways. The first is that it uses just her first name. It just says Madeleine, exclamation point, as opposed to that Kunin, her last name, from the 1980 campaign. When you look at campaign buttons, it's somewhat unusual to have just the first name of a candidate on the button. And I think this is because she's a woman. The name Madeleine generally used as a woman's name, and using it on the campaign button makes it very clear that you are voting for a woman to be governor of Vermont. The second slightly unusual thing about this campaign button is the script writing here. It's not that blocky, solid, bold font that you saw on the other campaign button and that is more typical for a campaign button. It's almost a handwriting font. It sort of telegraphs a little bit that it's a little bit softer, perhaps more feminine. Font and typography has symbolism much like anything else, and you really don't see many buttons, political campaign buttons, with handwriting on them like this. So both of these things are sort of the moment of a woman running for Vermont's highest elected office. Thanks for joining us today. To learn more about the Vermont Historical Society and see more from our collections, follow us on social media.